Hello, everybody. This is Chris, the Part 66 consultant, and today we have a friend of mine called Rob Cecil, who we've known each other now for over 20 years. We met around the early 2000s, I think 2003 or 2004, in Bahrain, of all places. And just to give you a quick rundown on Rob's history and the angle that we're taking today with this YouTube video is Rob's struggles and travels through changing different NAAs. So Rob went from UK CAA to Bahrain CAA to Qatar. Is it DJC?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
DGAC, and then after 5, 6 years there, he decided move to Australia, and now has got a CASA license. So, Rob, take it away. Tell us. Let's start with our meeting in Bahrain. Were you licensed then, or were you still unlicensed?
Hi, Chris. Great to see you again, mate. Yeah, so I went to Bahrain and I was working for SR Technics, and originally I did have a UK license when I went to Bahrain, and when I met you, I had a UK license which I had to convert to a EASA license before, through all the years. So I had a EASA license when I first went to Bahrain, but with no type ratings. And when I started with SR Technics, they soon put me on a Airbus A330 and a A340 type rating course. So that was my first course in Bahrain with SR Technics, which is fantastic because for me, it was the best scenario. I was working hands-on as an AME, as a mechanic, all the nitty-gritty jobs, and reading the manuals from the ground upwards from a maintenance point of view. So when I did the type course, I really knew the aircraft in and out. You can take years to spend on the aircraft, but I was on there for that time, and it was perfect for me. So I got the Airbus A330 and 340 as my first license in Bahrain. So I'll have to thank SR Technics for that.
That's good.
That was really good. And I like, and that's always going to be the benchmark of my licensing now, the
Really?
Airbus A330, for better or for worse. And I spent many years in Bahrain. It was a great time, wasn't it, Chris?
Yeah.
Great
Yeah,
characters, hardships as well. There were definitely hardships working from a maintenance point of view in the Middle East. The temperature was definitely one of those things. The temperature, the environment.
Yeah.
But I think if you can come through those adversities and still do a quality job and working as a team, and at the end of the day getting the CRS on the aircraft safely out of maintenance, you definitely become a more rounded individual rather than having an easy life in a different maintenance organization. So I'm absolutely grateful for those hard times.
I think Bahrain made even the most privileged of us harder, better people, because of all the environments you're talking about. Just not only the work environment, but the amount of work we had there, the volume of traffic of job cars to be done. It was an A check every night, and it was a wide body, and it was 767s full of troubles, and it was 330s full of cabin issues, and it was 320s engine changes. Those 340s with the CFM 56, we were having an engine change every 3 or 4 days, and it made us more resilient people, And do you remember, speaking of what the topic is today, changing of authorizations, do you remember when we started there, the aircraft were Omani registered, and overnight they changed to the Bahrain register, and there was one aircraft that was in on an A check. We all couldn't sign for it anymore. Do you remember? So when the check started, we could sign a CRS, and at 6 a.m, we weren't authorized to sign it anymore because we had to go and do the Bahraini CAA license exam, which was a Module 10 equivalent, which was a air ledge. So I presume you did that.
Yeah, me and our friend, we did it together actually. He's Cypriot as well.
Oh yeah,
I don't know where he's gone. He's in Rome now or Italy. I can't remember.
Okay.
So me and Lambros,
Yeah, yeah,
we did our open book exam, and it's a bit daunting actually an open book because we had three books about that big open book, and you have the time period to do it, and so you have to find it. You have to find it in an open book.
yeah.
So it's some people think open book may be a better way to do it or an easier way, but it's still daunting, the open book exams, I think.
Well, pilots do open book, and
Mhm.
pilots they because they have to in an emergency they have to refer to the QRH, and
That's right. Very true.
it's speed is of the essence, you know.
Very
Um,
true. Yeah, right. Yeah.
whereas engineers um, they take their sweet time. They don't care. Time is an absolutely no object to them, you know. So
Yeah.
that's the two extremes of the situation.
Mhm.
If you have a conscience and you're in line maintenance, and time for you counts as well, you know, you want to get it done. But there's there are two trains of thought. Open book is maybe easier
Mhm.
if you know where to look.
And
Yeah.
that's the thing. Yeah. Yeah. Well,
So
it's
that
good. Look, I passed it, and nowadays when I use the MEL and I'm on an aircraft full of passengers, it's about to depart. We have a fault. Most of the time you're not going to fix it, so you have to MEL it, and that's when the open book comes in. You have to know where the chapter is, know what the limitations are, what's the operational restrictions if an MEL is applied. So yeah, you're absolutely right, Chris. MEL, open book philosophy is a skill that we all need. Yeah.
and it comes with what I tell our members and our students and all the people that are doing their license. Everything comes in our job with familiarity.
Mhm.
The more you do it, the more familiar you get with it, the quicker you get at it
Mhm.
because you remember it time and time again. And recently we did an SRM course, um, and the biggest problem people have with the SRM is um, lack of familiarity.
Mhm.
Yeah, you get a dent on a or a damage on an aircraft every year, and if you're lucky and you're on shift, you're it. So
Mhm.
then it's like, oh my God, you're like, where do I start? You know?
Mhm.
So one of
Yeah.
our resources is a little cheat sheet, you know. So which is a downloadable thing resource which we've got in our membership. So members they print it out, they got it in their little black book, so that when you're driving out to the aircraft from the line office to go and visit this aircraft with the dent, you've already read your cheat sheet. Oh yeah, this is what I've got to do. This is because the Airbus one is a nightmare, you know,
Mhm.
with all this weight variance and all that rubbish, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the Boeing one's pretty straightforward, but the Airbus one is a minefield. So I made
Mhm.
this little cheat sheet
Yeah.
mainly due to lack of familiarity, you
Yeah.
know.
Uh-huh.
So and so that's one thing that you know
Mm.
a line engineer he gets really good at a few things
Mm.
like the MEL because you're dealing with it every day, but other things, when do you do it? You
Yeah,
know.
like you're right. SRM, when do you do it? Yeah. Yeah.
That's right. So familiarity,
Mm.
familiarity is the and that's open book is getting
Mhm.
familiar with it and being able. I never forget. I had a exam once in Germany. And it was an oral exam, and the the exam it was on the 320 for my German license. This was, and the Germans they really pushed you in the corner. You had to book an exam with an examiner, and he sat in the right hand seat, you sat in the left hand seat, and he went right. Tell me every switch from the top left to the bottom right on the overhead panel, what it
Wow.
does, what power supplies go through it, what it switches, in what condition, and and on and on and on, and it was just and they just hammer you, and it started at 2 a.m. this exam,
Oh my God. That's yeah.
and
Awful time.
at 9:30 a.m. he said, right, um, should we go to the Tankstelle, which is the service station, and get a coffee,
Yeah.
you know? I said, all right, and then what? He says, oh, then we come back and we'll continue in the office.
Oh no.
you know. But it was, and I was like, why do you do this? Why do you do?
Mhm.
He says, I'll tell you why we do it. We do it to push people in the corner till they can't answer anymore.
Mm,
And if they can't answer anymore, then we monitor to see where they go to find the answer, which is what an engineer
okay.
should be doing, you know?
Yeah,
So they were
yeah, yeah.
simulating,
Hmm.
they were asking questions which you could effectively learn parrot fashion, but they were pushing you until you couldn't answer anymore to see your limit, you know?
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway, I was sat in the cockpit and he was, at one point, I was going on and on about switch after switch after switch after switch after switch after switch. And I just turned around to him and suddenly I noticed his eyes were closed. He dozed
Okay.
off. So I just kept going, and just got slower and slower. And at one point, he sort of woke up. He says, "That's good. Okay, let's do something else," you know. But he
Nice.
pushed me until I couldn't anymore. And he
Yeah.
says, I said to him, I don't know the answer to that question,
Mhm,
but I know where to look. Oh, he says, okay. He says,
mhm,
where would you look? I says, I'll go to the FCOM,
mhm.
yeah, and pull it out and get the answer for you. He says, that's all right. I said, well, once I got the FCOM, why don't I just sit here and just tell you all the answers that you want to know? He said, because the more you read from the FCOM, the more questions I'll ask you.
Yeah.
So you can't win. You can't
Yeah, yeah.
win.
Okay.
So
Mhm.
everything has to be in sort of measured.
Mhm.
You know?
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah. So familiarity. Anyway, we're off topic. What about
Yeah.
so Bahrain finished and you went to Qatar?
Yeah. So I went to Qatar, and that was I had a great interview. I can't remember the guy who interviewed me. So I interviewed, and he wanted me for the A330. So he angled all my interview questions for the A330, which is at that time fantastic because I'm not saying I know everything because it's hard to know everything about one aircraft, but I really was confident with the aircraft, and I got the job on the back of the interview. But to get your authorization issued by Qatar Airways, you have to pass. There's three parts to the company authorization, and if I remember it correctly, there's a practical board, a theoretical board, and then a documentational board. So it's three different boards you have to apply for and wait for a slot for your exam. And in my intake, about I can't remember how many engineers were taken on. Quite a few engineers. So look, say 20 engineers were taken on. I think 4 or 5 dropped out because they couldn't pass the internal
All
quality
exam. Yeah.
audit, and they just couldn't pass it. They didn't get the authorization in the end, and so they had to leave. But I remember I did a couple of retakes, but
Mm,
it was tricky, but it was also quite stimulating because exactly like your exam you were saying in the cockpit.
mm,
They ask you everything. There's 3 people in front of me. There's what like quality engineer, one chief engineer, and one maybe even a training manager or something like that. And they'd give me scenarios. What would you do in this situation? If a pilot raised up this defect entry, how would you then proceed? So, and you can use this like a phone a friend sort of answer every now and again. You can say, well, I don't know where the answer is, but I know where to find it. And
mm,
usually they say, okay, well, here's a computer, go find it for us. But you
mm,
couldn't, they didn't expect you to say that for every answer. They
mm,
wanted you to sort of know.
mm,
And yeah, when I got my approval, I really felt I earned it. You know, I had the
mm,
company authorization to sign for the
mm.
aircraft. They really made you jump through hoops, but that was quite tricky, I must say.
Yeah. And this was so you got an authorization. You didn't have to get a Qatari license. They just
I,
accepted the EASA, did they?
yeah, they did initially, but after 2 years, they expected me to have the Qatari license, and I just left just before 2 years. But I had my date. I had my date to get my Qatari license. I just
Okay.
out of the blue, I got an offer to go to Australia, and I thought for about 2 seconds about it, and I took the job.
All right. So tell us about Australia. Um,
So Australia, I wanted to get me and Angel. We're in Bahrain. As much as we love Bahrain, we wanted to get to Australia. So we went on holiday one time, and we saw you as well, Chris, because yeah, I think you were already in Australia by that time. And we fell in love with Australia. And but the trick was at my age to get the visa to enter Australia. So first step was get my CASA license, and I eventually got it. I think I got my license in 2012. But to achieve that, I first had to get the RPL, a recognised prior learning. and there's a few different agencies that gave that service, but I ended up going with Aviation Australia. They seemed to be the most straightforward. They were very expensive. I can't remember how much, but in the end, it was worth it because I got my license.
Mm.
So yeah, I did my RPL, which Aviation Australia went through. They gave me. I had to give them loads of paperwork, all the courses I've done, all the experience I've had, all the aircraft I've worked on, and they, in the end, formulated what I was lacking and what was required from CASA. So I had to, if I believe, I did have to do air legislation, which I think was a written exam and a multiple choice exam, and then chapter 45. I can't remember what the module it was, but
42 maybe.
42. Okay, yeah,
Modular
42.
avionics, was it?
That's right. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what I did. So I had to take three exams in the end, which I flew, and I wasn't living in Australia at the time. I had to fly myself to Australia, and I think I stayed at your house actually to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, at that time. So I flew to Australia and passed the exams, and then flew back, and then
Mm.
eventually got my license. But it was such a hard task to achieve, getting a clear answer from Aviation Australia what I really needed. And then the money, it was astronomical how many dollars I spent on it. I couldn't tell you, but it was
Mm.
ridiculous amounts.
Mm.
So I know personally loads of people who started that process and gave up in the end because it was so
Mm.
arduous.
I know people that ran out of the 10 years. That's how long it
Mm-hmm.
took them because of being messed around, not giving straight answers. I know a guy from Singapore, he's paid $70,000 and still
Mm-hmm.
not achieved what he wants to achieve. And it's quite sad.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and there's two or three points I want to make here, just to clarify. One is, guys, if you're applying from a lot of people recently have decided, oh, I'm going to get a CASA license and move to Australia. People from the Indian continent, Sri Lanka, Pakistan. Um, there's nothing, no, I've got nothing against people traveling. However, a CASA license, is not a work visa, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're two separate things. Getting the license and getting a work visa are two completely separate things. So it's the same when you apply to go to Europe. Oh, I want to get my EASA license. I got my EASA license with the Hungarian NAA. Fine. Which country can I go and work to now? You can't because it depends on the country you want to go and work in, what immigration laws they have.
Mm-hmm.
But I've
Mm-hmm.
got a Hungarian EASA license. Can't I go to Hungary? No, Hungary, the EASA license from Hungary is the EASA license from Hungary. Their immigration laws are a completely separate
Mm-hmm.
kettle of fish. So, guys, be very careful. Rob was fortunate. He had a British passport. There's a point system. He could travel. Um, although Rob has a British passport, his parents, he's Indian heritage. So sometimes we have the luck of the passport. Sometimes we have the luck of being in the right place at the right time, and all the stars have to align. And it's just one of those things. But what I'm trying to get to here is research. Research everything 100%. Nowadays, with Google and Siri, it's very, very easy. When in our time, it was hard. If you don't want to, if you don't want to consult Google and Siri, don't consult Facebook, please.
Mm-hmm.
Find a mentor.
Yeah,
Find
right.
somebody who's done it. All right. I've done it. Ask me. Rob's done it. Ask him. That's why we're doing this interview, so that you can see that such people exist that did it. And if they can do it, you can do it. Okay. So, finally, Australia. And the reason I did this little sort of dog leg is because I wanted to get to your thing with your struggle with the visa.
Oh yeah, well, yeah. Here's the thing.
All right.
So, yeah, so I got my full CASA license with all my type ratings in 2012. I only got to Australia to work and live in 2016. So many years later. So, Chris, you're absolutely right. Just because you held the qualifications of CASA. They're very different. That's no work visa. So my personal issue was I couldn't find a sponsor from within Australia to bring me in from outside of Australia. So that's why it was really hard for me. Age was a bit of a factor at the time. I know things change every other year. The point system changed how to get into Australia. But for me, it was very hard, and I was very lucky that a company wanted someone from outside of Australia, and they reached out to me, and I was very fortunate. So yeah, but Chris, you're absolutely right about the point about the visa working right to work in Australia is a separate entity which people do have to research, other than having the CASA license. Yeah, you're right.
And we know that a lot of people, for a better life or whatever, in India, in Pakistan, in Sri Lanka, they try to upskill with the hope of providing better for their family
Mm-hmm.
in an EASA member state country, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But having an EASA license doesn't guarantee that,
Mm-hmm.
you
Yeah,
know.
you're right.
So
Yeah.
ask people that have done it
Mm-hmm.
before you find out the hard way, because even you being as informed as you were,
Mm-hmm.
you found out the hard way. You had a extra the residency wasn't it was delayed um,
Mm-hmm.
through bad information, misinformation,
Mm-hmm.
because um, you can be prepared 100% and still, even 100%, something's going to happen, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, you're
So,
right.
yeah,
Yeah.
good. So, so you're now working for an
Yeah,
airline, finally back
yeah,
to the airlines.
yeah. I'm working with an airline and very happy. It's a four on, four off job. Most airlines are going to be a day shift, night shift. Depending on the operation, you might only do day shift. But yeah, I'm very happy. I'm working on regional airplanes. So this is the first for me. I've always worked on wide body. The first planes I touched was, I think, the very first plane I touched, because I started in engines really. I did almost 10 years of my apprenticeship building, stripping, inspecting, testing jet engines for the military. So I started off in engines. And then I thought there's got to be more than aviation than just engines. So so I put myself through college, got the rest of my license, and then I started as a mechanic. So on in England, so I started on 727s, then three Airbus A320s, then the real meaty jobs. I started working on 747s and DC-10s, which
Okay.
I think the late 60s, early 70s technology, wide jets, big bodies, were just marvelous aircraft. You know, that I learned so much in it, and they're like, in some respects, my heyday. You know, your first love. I love wide bodies.
Yeah.
You know, and so I've gone from wide bodies, old design, to the Middle East, which is sort of up to date wide bodies. And then with Qatar Airways, I was with very modern, the 350. Yeah, Qatar Airways was the launch customer for the Airbus A350, and I was the very first course on the 350 in the whole world to go to Toulouse to do that. And I love the modern technology is fantastic. It's a very cognitive thing, like all modern aircraft are going to be from now on.
Mm.
Everything's linked to computers.
Yeah.
So the B1, B2 issue is there. You know, thankfully, I've always been a full B1. I can do all the electronics. I can do modular component test. As long as there's a press the test
Yeah.
situation, I can
Yeah.
test it and certify for it. But now I've gone from those aircraft to regional aircraft. So I'm in Sydney working on regional aircraft, which I've never worked on before, but it's an eye opener and
Mm.
by no means any less technical. And I believe the guys who work on these aircraft, the regional aircraft, are as intelligent and skilled and hardworking and competent and gifted as anyone who works on like 777.
Mm.
Because the 777, I love the 777. I'm not licensed on it, but I've done many hours on it. It's a
But you
great
got a
aircraft.
computer to tell you what's wrong with it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Whereas
Yeah.
these things, you don't have a computer to tell you what's wrong with it. So you have to go and
Yeah.
find out what's wrong with it.
Yeah. And so the guys I'm working with who've been working on these aircraft for 10, 20 years, I look at them with awe, yeah, and respect because they know
Mm.
it. They know, but it's taken years of caring,
Trial and error.
wanting to find out, and they go home thinking, "What was that problem?" And they'll go into work tomorrow and they'll research it in their own time.
Mm.
What was that problem? How did I fix it? How should
Mm.
I fix it next time? And I think
Whereas,
that's
whereas with the modern ones, it's problem, solution,
Yeah.
next. Problem, solution, next. And there is no caring. You're just an
Hmm.
administrator. You just,
Yeah.
um, and it's taking a bit of the shine off the engineer.
Yeah,
Um,
it has a little bit. And
yeah.
from a safety point of view and from a business point of view and from a turnover, they just want to keep the aircraft flying. And
Mm,
the minimum time it's spent on the ground and minimum brain capacity it takes for someone to fix a job is better for the airline. They just want to keep it flying to make money.
mm,
So I understand where aviation's gone, modern aviation,
mm,
the direction it's going. I understand that. But you're right, Chris. When you have older aircraft, which you don't have all the helpful tips,
mm,
then you really have to cognitively understand wiring diagrams, schematics, because the aircraft's not going to necessarily tell you what the problem is, and you have to fix the problem.
mm. Yeah.
Mm.
Good. So any new destinations on the horizon? Are you going to do another move to any other countries, or is that it now?
But that's a good question. I love Australia. It's a wonderful country to live in. But I didn't realize I was going to make a move to Bahrain first, and I didn't realize I was going to make a move to Qatar. And I did know I was always going to come to Australia. But the point is, you don't really know what the future is going to bring to you, and so I can't rule it out. But at the moment, I love Australia. I'm going to stay here.
Good.
But who knows what's going to happen in the future? Maybe Hawaii. Who knows?
Excellent. Well, in the life of an aircraft engineer, you never know.
Exactly.
Look
Yeah.
at 3 years ago, did we ever think that COVID would ground the whole world's aircraft? You know,
Hmm.
you never
Hmm.
know what stands around the corner, and the only thing that we can do is be prepared. That's all that we can do, you know?
Hmm. Can
Excellent.
I
All right,
just say
Rob.
one thing?
Yeah,
Can
go
I
on.
just say one thing before we wrap
Yeah,
up?
yeah.
I remember when I was working on DC-10s years ago, and I was offered a course. They offered me, said, "Do you want it? Do you not?" And I said, "No, I don't. I don't need a course. It's an old aircraft. I don't know. I don't want it." And then when I left, and I was no longer working on DC-10s, and I knew they were still flying around, I thought to myself, I kicked myself. I thought, why didn't I take that course? It was offered to me. I should have just taken it, regardless of what I thought the future may be. And I learned something from that one experience that if you have an opportunity to take a course or do a course, do it because you, like you said,
Never,
you don't know what the future's
never,
going to bring.
never turn down a course, mate. Never turn
Yes,
down a course.
because you're right, Chris. In aviation, you don't know what's around the corner. You don't know what the next decision in your career is going to be, and maybe you should have got that type course. So you know,
After I did the 757 course, I vowed to myself I would never do a course on an aircraft where I cannot walk under it standing up. Yeah. Because the 757, it was such
yeah,
a comfortable aircraft because I could do everything up here, you know?
yeah,
And then years and years and years later, I ended up doing a 146 course. Yeah. Where I had to change a wheel lying down, you know. But it's a principle of mine. Never turn down a course because if you've got it, you've got it.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
You know,
mm-hmm,
it's better to have it and not use it than to not have it and need it.
mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah, you're right. Who knows? You might get offered a job that suits you in Papua New Guinea and whatever regional airplane, and that might be the best job you've ever had. So you're absolutely right. Never turn down a course.
never turn down a course. Good. A few good tips there from you, Rob, for today. That's good. That was pretty informative, I think, and I'm happy we could do this, and I hope that people um, have got something out of it. And yeah, thanks very much.
That's Chris.